Hey guys, it's Nico from Steel City Vintage, and we're back with another episode of Rare Bird Alert. Today's watch is an Omega reference 2975. Now this one is by no means as rare as the Cartier we featured in our first episode, but it is definitely something that's uncommon. So we'll get more into it in the video. All right, so getting right into it, like I said, this is an Omega Seamaster reference 2975. What makes this one special is the case. So this one is encased in 18 karat solid pink gold. Now, to give you some frame of reference, this is, through my research at least, the only one that I've seen offered for sale in solid pink gold. Now, I have seen other ones in pink gold, but those were pink gold capped, which would mean that on the back it would be stainless steel, and then the medallion, if correct, would be also in pink gold. I have seen examples out there with the Seamaster, seahorse, hippocampus, the medallion on the back, in yellow gold on pink gold capped examples. That would indicate that the case back has been swapped. What's interesting about this one is on Omega's own website, they have it listed still to this day in quotations as special. The issue being they don't really provide us with any details of why that was dubbed. This has led to a lot of collector communities and others with their own theories, hypothesizing a number of different reasons of why that could be. One of which was the fact that I saw somebody on Omega forums posting that there was an Olympic Games in 1960. So they theorized that this was part of Omega's way to pump up advertisement by releasing the successor to the Seamaster line a year or two prior to the Omega Games. Now, this was only produced for 1 year. So a limited production run of 1 year from 1958 to 1959. So production numbers of this watch alone is already pretty small, relatively speaking to Omega's production numbers of other models in the past. The other cool thing about this reference is this is the first time Omega ever released a Seamaster with that Seamonster hippocampus on the back, and it is quite large, relatively speaking to subsequent models. Now, it wasn't something that was done unilaterally, meaning it wasn't the only reference that went on to feature the Seamaster or Seamonster hippocampus on the back. There were actually multiple models that even in the same year that were released, but this was the first one. Another theory going around is this Seamaster may have been released with an increased depth rating, therefore giving it the special moniker on their website. This doesn't seem to hold as much water or value because even reflecting back on that same website I discussed earlier, the depth rating is still listed at the same depth. Although it was a good theory, I don't think that was the case. Now, this example is in pretty good condition. There is some patina on the 2 to 4 o'clock hour marker range, and the case has been polished in the past, but not overly so. There's still distinctive lines, especially with regards to that hippocampus. Unfortunately, the crown was replaced in the past. This you can tell because it's yellow gold and it's unsigned, so it doesn't match the case. Now, we can go on to source things like crowns. Now, this watch did already sell, but in the future we can go on to source things like crowns. We don't do so right off the bat because unfortunately the market doesn't reflect the increase in price, meaning if I were to go out and source a crown, even at my cost, I can't artificially just mark up that price relative to what the cost of the part was. It does make things harder to sell when the cost is increased. But I always do offer my sourcing abilities to go out and find parts should the buyer who's already purchased a watch wish. So that's always an option going in the future. With regards to patina, I think that's something that's always a personal preference. There's always going to be people out there that prefer a nice clean dial versus one that's patinated. You know, the people who do like patina always argue that it adds history to the watch and, you know, gives it a type of unique character. That's part of the allure of vintage versus modern. There's not that unique characteristic of, you know, a patinated dial. The materials have advanced themselves so far that you're pretty much, you know, a Submariner from, you know, 2022 theoretically is going to look like everyone else's Submariner other than the scratches on the case and bracelet. The dial is going to continue to look the same. The materials have just, you know, advanced from a technical perspective so much. So that is part of the allure for vintage, is having you know, a dial that might have a little more character. However, you know, there are collectors out there that, you know, prefer a nice clean dial with no patina or damage. And it's the same thing with the case. Now this case does have some tarnishing to it, leading to believe that the gold has been untouched for quite a while and probably sitting somewhere. So it's developed this charming red burgundy color, you know, in different areas. I personally don't mind patina on a case. I don't like it as much on a dial anymore, but on a case I think it does add some charm, especially to a precious metal like this. But that's something that you can always use just like a polishing cloth really lightly and take out should you wish in the future, without affecting, you know, the case lines and character. We always advise not to polish a vintage watch unless it's already been polished in the past. But with regards to tarnishing of a case where it develops that characteristic red color on the gold, that's something that you can get out without affecting, you know, the original finishing of a case or the lines. So that's okay. The other thing about this is just a dial. You know, that two-tone dial that Omega did in the 50s is just such a pleasure to look at. The contrast brushing, you know, giving it that depth and that, you know, difference in color and look. This one also being non-luminous with applied rose gold hour markers and matching Dauphine hands, I think really does add character to the watch, especially when coupled with the case. You know, this one was a pleasure to find, and it did go pretty quick. You know, deservingly so. It is a special watch, and it was a pleasure to have in my possession. Another interesting thing about this model is there's been links with this model to Gerald Genta. He was involved in Omega during the early 60s. He is tied to the design of the dogleg constellations, but I've also read that he's been involved in the construction of this watch from the standpoint of including the seahorse medallion on the back, as well as this watch being the first Seamaster that was offered with a beads of rice bracelet, you know, that popular bracelet that Omega has become known for. You know, a bracelet that has rivaled the Jubilee from Rolex. So the Seahorse medallion with this reference and the beads of rice bracelet does have ties back to Gerald Genta, and that was another theory of why it was presented as a special Seamaster. We can also see this in old adverts. You can see this exact watch in a different case metal with a beads of rice bracelet being offered in an old advert by Omega, which I thought was really cool. The first time that a Seamaster has been offered with that. I hope you guys found this you know, video interesting, and if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button, it really does help to make this channel grow, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future. Take care.